it's just common knowledge. Myth number 2, the US German tanks sucked in comparison to the superior German tanks. People often imagine the M4 Sherman as this puny little tank that was far outclassed by German tanks and turned into a flaming death trap anytime you shot at it. And frankly, I won't stand for the Sherman tank slander any longer. Sure, the Sherman tank wasn't perfect, but it was one of the most effective, and I think there are 3 main reasons why the Sherman tank is so widely discredited these days. I'm not planning out a list of reasons for every myth, that's just how it's working out so far. First, many people only focus on early versions of the Sherman, which did have some issues. The biggest issue people tend to focus on is their reputation for catching fire when they were hit by the end. This was somewhat of a problem early on, but the military fixed it relatively quickly by moving the ammo racks and adding wet ammo stowage. Wet stowage refers to liquid-filled bladders that would help prevent fires if the ammo racks were hit. This didn't make it impossible for Shermans to catch fire, but it significantly reduced burn rates. Even before that change, though, Shermans didn't really burn at a way higher rate than other tanks of the period like many people think. That problem certainly wasn't unique to the Sherman. Plus, a penetrating hit that enough to set the ammo on fire likely would have put the tank out of action even if it didn't catch fire. Later versions of the Sherman also had thicker armor and other improvements that helped even more. Even among Shermans that did burn during the war, the crew members were often able to safely bail out before the flames consumed the tank. Especially with those changes made during the war, Sherman tanks weren't Tommy cookers like many people say anymore than German tanks were kraut roasters. Second, people put too much emphasis on tank versus tank comparisons. Don't get me wrong, just like any other World War II nerd, I love looking at the stats of one tank in comparison to another because I find it interesting, but these comparisons are basically useless at determining how effective a tank was on the battlefield. Despite what some people may imagine, tank strategy during World War II did not consist of each side sending their best tank to duel it out in the town square at high noon. Tanks often worked hand in hand with the infantry to assault enemy positions, and even though of course tanks did encounter other tanks at times, enemy tanks only made up about 15% of the targets fired upon by US tanks during the war, according to the US Army report. The majority targets were things like buildings, fortifications, enemy personnel, anti-tank guns, other vehicles, etc. In addition to the fact that it was somewhat rare for these tanks to actually be duking it out with one another, these comparisons are often super unrealistic and stacked against the Sherman. Oh, you're telling me the Sherman medium tank had thinner armor and a smaller gun than the German King Tiger heavy tank? Well, that must mean the Sherman was a terrible design. Sorry, I'm kind of laying sarcasm on thick today, but that's a real conclusion I see people make from that comparison, and it's just nonsense. Many of the tanks that the Shermans often directly compared to were not in the same class and were not frequently encountered by Shermans. For example, many people say there are only 3 verified cases of US troops encountering German Tiger 1s from Normandy through the end of the war. Those numbers are really hard to hammer down because US troops were really bad at identifying German tanks and would often report other German tanks as being Tigers. In any case, German heavy tanks like Tigers and even Panthers weren't all that common on the battlefield, and comparing them directly to the Sherman in the ways that many people do is just silly. Medium tanks like the Sherman were built for mobility and support, not for tank tools. The German heavies were behemoths built around a completely different doctrine. Now that I think about it, maybe we should have designed some other type of vehicle designed specifically to destroy those German tanks. We could call it like a destroyer tank or something along those lines. Nah, that's a stupid idea. It makes a bit more sense to compare the Sherman to something a bit more common and similar like the Panzer IV, but even then it's not like the tanks were dueling all the time or something. And third, the Sherman's German counterparts have developed larger than life reputations. In addition to German heavy tanks not being super common on the battlefield, they often weren't that great. In fact, that's one of the reasons they weren't all that common on the battlefield. They often didn't make it there due to mechanical failure. The Sherman was a great vehicle, but fairly reliable and easy to maintain. While the US was making simple practical tanks that were effective on the battlefield, the Germans were busy trying to design the largest and most complicated tanks in history. And believe it or not, it didn't exactly pay off for them. People often share these sayings like the Tiger was the 5 Shermans, but the Americans always had 6 of them. There's even an entire subreddit called r/Sherman economy dedicated to tracking these wild comparisons of how many Shermans equal 1 German tank. Here in the real world, the later war variants of the Shermans with 76mm guns had plenty of power to knock out those big bad German tanks, and in many cases, even the 75mm guns were plenty to do the job depending on the circumstance. I even found one period report of a measly anime Greyhound knocking out a German Tiger tank with its 37mm gun. Although, like I said, US troops were notoriously bad at identifying German tank models, so it could have been something else. These German tanks are often viewed as superior to Shermans today, but even a German Tiger tank with an 88mm gun didn't have the range to knock out US tanks from the ditch that it broke down in 10 miles behind the line. So no, the Sherman tank did not suck. It wasn't made to max out its dueling stats on paper. It was made to win the war. The Sherman was versatile, reliable, easy to produce and maintain, and just
So the issue he addresses with the German tanks mainly because, to be honest, I don't care about talking about the Sherman because he said right things about the Sherman. So why? Because basically he said that people should not compare heavy German heavy tanks to the Sherman because they were made for 2 different purposes and they are made to support infantry. And that's a valid point if you are talking about the early point of view about the war. But the Sherman with the 76mm gun can't be also compared with a Tiger because they are 2 different types of tank. And I agree with that. You should rather compare them to a Panther or either a Panzer IV or even a Panzer III if we want to compare them with other medium tanks. So to me, the first part is completely fine. The other problem is that he addresses issues of the German tanks that are simply not really accurate. So as we can see here, the Tiger tank and the Panther tank are actually pretty reliable, except the Panther actually had problems related to actual inexperienced crews, and also another thing that's happened was that there were breakdowns done with mines, etc. So they just scooped all those broken Panthers, repaired them, and filled them again. Over and over again. That's something that they could do because they had the spare parts, they had the time to recover them, they had everything else to do with it. So he could just take them all, repair them, and fill them again. Meanwhile, having an understanding of what happened so it doesn't happen again. That's how that worked. So, as I already addressed, as the German tanks were pretty reliable, they were a pain in the ass to repair actually because they were complex, but that's not something I'm concentrating on. I'm concentrating on another thing. So he says that they broke so often they can't be recovered, and that's a straight up lie because it's not like they are breaking every time soon. No, they broke rarely, and when they broke, they took time to repair. But at the same time, you can have a German tank that is repaired and lasts more than a T-34, it lasts more than a Sherman, but it breaks. When it breaks, you can spend days on it. So that's basically the doctrine here. Quality over quantity, as we can understand. So why in the Western Front and also on the latest part of the Eastern Front, why did they abandon tanks? So as I covered in past videos, we can see that the Germans were actually overstretched between the Western and the Eastern Front. There was a war on two fronts that was lasting basically 4 years for what it regards about the Eastern Front and just 1 year in the Western Front. So what happened is that German industry, as we know, was bombed by English and American forces to a point where they couldn't produce and keep up with the spare parts. So they were forced to abandon their tanks, blow them up, and just leave them there because they couldn't repair them because they lacked the spare parts. Absolutely not, because they didn't have enough, for example, time, or even as he says, they broke down so much that no, that's false. They lacked the spare parts to repair them, so they couldn't repair them anymore. They were forced to leave them behind. Also, about the US Army doctrine, it was more like a World War I doctrine, as we know, and we can also see it through one main thing, in my opinion, is that their design were so much different between each other. Between all the nations, the US had more particular tank destroyers. We can see it, for example, in the Wolverine. As you can see, it has a moving turret. Meanwhile, other tank destroyers didn't have any turret. For example, as we can see here, the Stug 3, the also Jagdpanzer, Su-100, etc., because they had different purposes. And so this is because the US had a central planning basically for what is a tank destroyer. They had a doctrine of what is a tank destroyer and how it's going to be used. It's needed because the tank destroyer is a central part in their doctrine. They realized this was obsolete because basically, you have to deal also with tanks, not only with buildings, etc. And so you need a vehicle that can do both at the same time. And so that's why they changed basically the 75mm gun with a 76mm gun. So this is basically the acknowledgement of the fact that their doctrine is obsolete by now. And about the tank-to-tank claim about the fact that they are going to shoot at houses or even positions more, it's kind of true in the Western Front mainly, but for example, if you are dealing with something else, you need to be able to engage both. So, because the crew of the Sherman can just open the hatch, say to the German, "We're here to support the infantry, not fighting tanks." That's not how it works. You need to have a vehicle that is good at everything in war. Because if it lacks in something, it's going to be destroyed, and the Sherman is a proof of this. A tank-to-tank engagement, by average, is by 1,000 meters. I don't know if 1 kilometer. Do you know how much it is? It's really long. So if there is a tank-to-tank engagement and you are a Sherman, you are going to get smoked. There is nothing you can do because a German tank, it's going to punch through your armor and you can do anything about it because you are there for the infantry. With a 76mm gun, instead, you have more chances to knock out your opponent and win the engagement. Meanwhile, the 75mm just had to punch through his armors pretty close range and basically with a lot of difficulty because you have to get close and then shoot, open fire on him. So any German tank is going to punch through your armor, or at least the ones that were fielded the most are going to punch through your armor. Yeah, I agree about the claim of the Tiger one, the fact that it wasn't overused, and also he repeats the myth about the Greyhound knocking up the Tiger, which is just a myth. He says, I will debunk all the myths about the US army myths during World War II, but that's not really the case because he reiterates the fact that a greyhound knocked out a tiger. That's a straight up lie. You can see here the whole article on basically Tank Encyclopedia, which provides a lot of bibliography to support this article, etc. or address the lack of bibliography to the ones who claim this happened. But yeah, that's basically what I think it should be done in inaccurate videos. That is not how, without any offense to the creator, you actually make a debunking video about some myths. I would recommend showing some bibliography to actually support your claims like I did.